Hello everyone, this is part 3 of What If Naruto was banished and becomes Raikage, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to see more comment down below. Kurenai and the others were being led away by the Kiri shinobi. Princess Sachi quickly turned to Commodore Kazan. Commodore Kazan, please, is there anything you can do to stop them, pleaded the princess to the Commodore. The Commodore just sighed and said sadly, I'm sorry princess, but as Raikage said, this is a shinobi matter and I have no power to stop him since he is well in his rights to do this since Kiri and Konoha are at war with one another. I'm sorry princess, there is nothing that I can do, it is out of my hands now, said the Commodore sadly. After which he then put his hand out to the princess and said, Princess Sachi, if you please come with me, I will lead you to my quarters where you may stay for the journey to Mizu no Kuni, said the Commodore. In which he led Princess Sachi aboard his ship and to his quarters. As he did so, the princess could not help but silently pray with all her might and hope with all her heart and soul that someone would come to rescue her and the Konoha nins and save them from this nightmare. 5 days later, in the middle of the mountain ranges of Kaminari no Kuni, lining country. Running through the mountain pass at high speed, a kunoiki from Kumogaku, the village hidden in the clouds, was returning from the mission she had been on. She was a dark-skinned woman, like many in Kumo, with golden-colored eyes and long purple hair, which she keeps up in a ponytail. Her attire consists of a backless, black sleeveless undershirt with an orange overshirt over the sleeveless undershirt with 2 white straps on each shoulder. She also wore a large beige sash around her waist like a belt with black stretch pants and long beige wrist warmers, secured by bands, and long beige leg warmers with brown light shoes. The name of the woman in question was Shihoin Yoruichi, one head of the Shihoin clan, one of the founding clans of Kumo. Before the beginning of the Civil War, her clan was among the only 5 known ninja clans that had a Kekkei Genkais in Kaminari no Kuni or Kumogaku, although that had changed after the Civil War ended. Her clan ability was to each turn into a certain type of animal that matched their personality. For example, she could turn into a cat. This made her clan excellent infiltrators and recon scouts. During the Civil War, she led her clan against the Godime Raikage and the corrupt Kaminari Daimyo, Lightning Daimyo, and was among the leaders of the rebel factions. During the Civil War, she was called Kasokuigen, Speed Mistress, too, due to her control over her chakra was so great that she could enhance her speed to an amazing degree, much like how Suin the Slug Princess could enhance her strength with her chakra control. When the Civil War finally ended, she was made the captain of Kumogaku Bolt unit by the Rokodime Raikage. Bolt was one of Kumogaku 4 Anbu divisions that were created by the Rokodime Raikage. Each division had its own name and its own responsibilities. The 4 divisions were Shock, Bolt, Kind, and Storm. Shock responsibilities mainly involved with security, where they were in charge of protecting the village as well as helping guarding the borders of both Kumo and Kaminari no Kuni, Lightning Country, from enemy shinobis and spies from entering the village or even the country. Shock also acted as Kumo's Oinen Tracker Nin division, where they would track down and find any and all missing nins from Kumogaku, although Kumo did not have many missing nin even with the Civil War, since nearly all the ninjas that sided with the Godime Raikage joined the Rokodime Raikage after the Civil War ended, and they were forgiven for siding with the Godime Raikage. Hence Shock duties mainly involved the security of Kumo and Kaminari no Kuni. Bolt 3 responsibilities were different from that of Shock. The Bolt division mainly dealt with assassination, where they would assassinate corrupted high-rank officials from other countries, warlords who were trying to start rebellions in countries, and enemy ninjas. Not only that, but they also dealt with high-ranked infiltration missions and information-gathering missions if it was needed as well. Kind was Kumogaku Intelligence Divisions, or otherwise known as the Central Intelligence Network Division, where they dealt with gathering information and intelligence on all non-alliance members or non-allied countries to the Heavenly Alliance, as well as other organizations that may threaten the Heavenly Alliance. They also dealt with counterintelligence, where if any shinobi village or country tried to infiltrate Kumogaku or the Heavenly Alliance, they would find them and deal with them. They would even create false leads or false information for them to follow, which would eventually lead those shinobi villages or countries to dead ends or even misjudge the Heavenly Alliance strength and capability. Kind also dealt with torture and interrogation when gathering information from rogue ninjas and enemy spies. Storm was Kumogaku Elite Strike Force. They were the elite of the elite in Kumogaku. Although Storm had the smallest numbers out of all the other Anbu divisions in Kumogaku, the quality of shinobis in Storm more than made up for their lack of numbers. Storm Training Program was the harshest training program in the entire elemental continent, in which they went through a training program that was called the 2 months of hell, which would test even a highly skilled veteran shinobi to his very limits, if not beyond them. After which any of the surviving applicants that got through the 2 months of hell would then go through a hard year-long training program on teamwork, physical training and training in sealing, as well as other types of training before they would be full Storm members. The Storm agents answered to no one but the Raikage himself, in which none of the other councils of Kumogakur had any control over them whatsoever. Storm handled only the most dangerous and most important missions to Kumo that the other Anbu division in Kumogakur or other the shinobis in the village would be unable to handle themselves. Yoruichi was currently on her way back to Kumo after successfully sneaking into Mizu no Kuni, Water Country, and meeting with the leader of one of the rebel factions in Mizu no Kuni. Her mission was to make contact with the rebel factions and meet one of their leaders, Saito Hajime, the Kiri no Okami, the Wolf of the Mist, former leader of Kirigakure Hidden Mist Assassination Division, as well as a former member of the Kiri no Shinobugatana Nananinshu, 7 Swordsmen of the Mist, who was famed for his mastery of the Sirento Kiringu, silent killing technique, where he would pounce on his enemies much like a wolf. His skill in Sirento Kiringu could only be matched by Momoki Zabuza the Kirigakure no Oni, the demon of the hidden mist. Saito was also a master in Mizoguchi Ha-Ito Ru style, which was the perfect sword style for an assassin-type ninja like Saito. The Mizoguchi Ha-Ito Ru style was one of the most lethal assassin sword styles to exist. It was mostly based on speed, and it uses brute force to eliminate any opponent. It is based on piercing the enemy with a horizontal hits. Once Yoruichi met Saito, she was to offer him and the other rebel factions an alliance between the Heavenly Alliance and the rebel factions in Mizu no Kuni against the Godai Mizukage and the Mizu Daimyo. When she did meet him, they talked for several hours, in which Saito and the rebel factions did not join in an alliance with the Heavenly Alliance against the Godai Mizukage and the Mizu Daimyo due to they didn't fully trust the Heavenly Alliance wiliness to help or intentions. But Saito did agree to share information on the happenings in Mizu no Kuni, as well as any relevant information on the Godai Mizukage and the Mizu Daimyo. In return, the Heavenly Alliance would agree to sneak in food, medicine and other supplies to the rebel factions. Yoruichi knew this arrangement would be good enough for the Raikage, since he had told her before she had left that it was unlikely that the rebel factions would immediately agree to the alliance. Her main objective was to build communication link between the Heavenly Alliance and the rebel faction in Mizu no Kuni. But with the arrangement that she got, it would make for a strong stepping stone to build the alliance between the rebel factions and the Heavenly Alliance. As Yoruichi was running, she suddenly heard a puffing sound and a sudden weight was felt of her right shoulder. When she stopped and looked to see what was on her shoulder, where she found her ninja cat summoned for Hina on her shoulder. The cat was actually a small cute little white kitten with grey stripes on its back and had big dark blue eye and wore a small little builder's helmet and a whistle around it. 5. If Yoruichi wasn't so used to seeing Hina, she would have gone kawaii, and squeezed the little kitten to death at how cute it looked. Hina, what are you doing here? Said a surprised Yoruichi. I thought I told you to stay with Saito so that he can send us information or items through you, said Yoruichi with a slight frown, thinking that the little summon was slacking off on its mission. But that what I'm doing, mistress, said Hina in a cute little voice. You have a message from Saito? Asked Yoruichi, surprised again. To which the just kitten nodded. Well, what is it? The scary-looking man, which caused Yoruichi to smile a little, since Saito would look scary to most people, told me to tell you that he got some information that you might be interested in. He said that the princess of Umi no Kuni, Sea Country, has been captured by ships sent by the Godai Mizukage and the Mizu Daimyo 5 days ago when she was on her way to Suki no Kuni, Moon Country, for her wedding, said Hina. What? Princess Sachi has been captured? Said Yoruichi in surprise. Yea, the scary man said that the Mizukage and the Mizu Daimyo plan to use the princess as a political hostage and force both Umi no Kuni and Suki no Kuni to give control of their trade alliance to Mizu no Kuni, as well as some other things. Where they would control all trade in the southern elemental seas, not to mention that they gain control of both countries' naval forces, giving Mizu no Kuni even more control over the seas, replied Hina. Damn those bastards, cursed Yoruichi. I knew we should have sent some of our own ships or men to guard the princess. If we had, this wouldn't have happened. Yoruichi then turned to the kitten again and asked, does Saito know where the princess is being held? To which the kitten nodded and said. Yea, he said that the princess is being held in the hold, answered Hina. Damn it. It figures that they send the princess there at the strongest prison in Mizu no Kuni, since they hold nearly all the political prisoners in Mizu no Kuni there, as well as most of the rebels ninjas that they captured, cursed Yoruichi. Scary Man also said that ninjas from Konoha are prisoners there as well, said Hina. Konoha ninjas are there too? Asked Yoruichi in surprise. Yay, Scary Man said that they were supposed to protect her but got captured as well, said Hina. Huh. So much for the mighty shinobis of Konoha, said Yoruichi with a tad bit of disgust in her voice, since she didn't have a very high opinion of Konoha shinobis. She turned to her summon. Good work, Hina. I summon you later and give you a treat later on. Also, when you see Saito, tell him I owe him one, said Yoruichi. That what Scary Man said too, said Hina. Which caused Yoruichi to raise her eyebrow in curiosity at what Hina meant. Scary Man said that he wanted the Raikage and the Heavenly Alliance as well as Umi no Kuni and Suki no Kuni to owe him one, since he knows that you will want to rescue her, replied Hina to her mistress' unspoken question. After hearing what Hina said, Yoruichi could not help but chuckle a little as she spoke. That sly bastard Saito, he a lot more cunning than I thought. Hina, you go back, Saito, okay, said Yoruichi. The kitten then nodded and left, after which once Hina was gone, Yoruichi quickly started to flow chakra into feet, in which she started to move so fast that she was nothing but a blur to the naked eye. 3 hours later, after 3 hours of non-stop running at her top speed, Yoruichi stopped when she was in the middle of the large mountain valley. She knew that she was near the village since she could see the genjutsu of clouds that cover Kumo right ahead of her. It was a special genjutsu that was created by one of the Raikage former senseis who was a master at genjutsu. The cloud cover genjutsu truly gave the village its name as the village hidden in the clouds. Not even the famed Sharingan of the Uchiha clan that Konoha loved to brag about could see through this genjutsu. As she walked forward into the cloud cover genjutsu, she then felt 4 chakra signatures near her, although they were well hidden where even the most skilled shinobi could easily miss them if they were not looking out for them. She then stopped and spoke in a confident and calm voice. You can all come out now, I know you're there. As soon as she finished speaking, 4 Kumo shock shinobis appeared in front of her, all wearing the yellow animal-shaped masks with black lines around them shaping the face. Most of the Anbu divisions in Kumogakuo wore animal masks to conceal their identities, but each division had different colors for their masks. Shock would wear masks with yellow and black, Bolt would wear masks with red and black, while Storm would wear masks with blue and black, while Kind didn't wear any since they did not need to. Forgive us, Yoruichi-senpai, we did not realize it was you until just now. We did not expect you back till this evening or tomorrow morning at the latest, said the Boar Mask Shock member who was clearly the captain of the group. That okay. I didn't plan to come back so quickly, but I have urgent information that the Raikage must know immediately, said Yoruichi in a serious tone which was unlike her usual cheerful and playful self that everyone knew her for. Knowing that it must be serious, consider her tone, the shock members quickly allowed Yoruichi walk through. As she continued to walk on, the genjutsu soon started to dispel, in which she could finally see the gates of Kumogakuo, or as many people would call it, New Kumogakuo. The village in front of Yoruichi was not the original Kumogakuo village, since that had been destroyed during the last battle against the Godime Raikage. After the civil war, the Rokudaime Raikage had New Kumogakuo built in this valley for several reasons. One of those reasons was because, like the original village, New Kumogakuo had mountains on both sides, and there were few paths, both large and small, that led to the valley where the village was, and all were easily defendable. The village had mountains on both its sides and one large mountain behind it. The main front wall, or outer wall, of the village was at least 30 meters thick of solid stone and was 100 meters high, and the wall stretched from one end of the valley to the other. The main village gateway had a large metal gate that had 2 crouching dragons on either side of it. The gate would be left open during the day and closed at night, in which in the event of a siege the gate would be bolted down, and a fuinjutsu called Fuan Tepiki, sealed iron wall, that was on the 2 dragon statues that flanked the entrance would activate, sealing the gate shut. As soon as Yoruichi went through the main entrance to village, she started to run along the rooftops of the civilian district, which was not an uncommon thing to happen in the village since ninjas would often do that. As she ran, Yoruichi looked around New Kumogakuo. She could not believe that they had built all this in just under 3 years, since they had only just fully finished building it a month or 2 ago. New Kumogakuo was easily 5 times bigger than any other village in the elemental nations. The village itself was split in 4 large districts with a wall dividing each district. The inner walls themselves were nowhere near as thick as the main one, but were at least a few feet thick and quite strong, and were just as high as the outer wall. The first district, which was directly behind the outer wall, was the civilian district, where the civilians lived in, whether they be rich or poor. All civilian lived in this district, in which they had their own schools, hospitals, gardens, parks, police force and stores to shop, since this district was also where trading for goods was mainly done. The second district was the industrial district, where the village had its machinery built, such as Kumo airships, war balloons, weapons, armor, siege weapons, trains, and other types of machinery. There was even several large landing platforms for the airships to land on in this district. The third district was the shinobi district, where all shinobis and their families as well as shinobi clans lived in this district, and like the civilian district, the shinobi district had their own academies to learn their ninja skills. Civilians were also allowed to join if they wanted to, hospitals, as well as weapons and gears stores to get equipment from. There was even a large stadium built for tournament fights and the chunin exams. The fourth and final district was the ruling district, where the Raikage was in, as well as the daimyo, due to the fact that during the civil war the former daimyo Yoshiaki burned down the palace and the capital of Kaminari no Kuni when he realized that he was losing the civil war and didn't want it to fall into rebel hands. After the civil war, when New Kumogakure was being built, it was decided that the new palace of the daimyo would be built in New Kumogakure and rule the county from New Kumogakure, although New Kumogakure itself would still be ruled by the Raikage, in which the daimyo could not interfere with anything that went on in the village unless it greatly affected the daimyo or the rest of the people of Kaminari no Kuni. When Yoruichi arrived at the ruling district, she looked up at the Raikage Tower, or to be more precise, the Raikage Mountain Tower, since the Raikage Tower was the mountain that was directly behind the village. The Raikage had tunneled into the mountain and hollowed it out to allow people to be in it, in which he then spent several months making it suitable for people to work in it, since the tower would be the main focus point for everything that happens in the village, whether it being civilian matter or shinobi matter. Whenever she looked at it, Yoruichi could not help but laugh, remembering when the Raikage first told her his plans for New Kumogakure and what he would do. She remembered how she called him and Barker to think he could do that. She also remembered how he just laughed and said that he'd be able to do that and build New Kumogakure in just under 3 years, after which she replied that if he did do that in that time frame, she'd tongue kiss her former second-in-command Swaffon 6 in public. Thinking of which she could not help but then laugh at all the men that had went to the hospital due massive nasal hemorrhaging when she did it, not to mention Swaffon could look at her in the face for a week after it without blushing of embarrassment. Since not only had the Raikage done what he said he'd do, he even tunneled into the sides of the other mountains on New Kumogakure side and made the sides of the mountains into docking ports for the Kumo airships. He also made several underground tunnels and bunkers under the village for the Kumo Anbu units, and underground tunnels and bunkers for the civilian to use should the village come under attack. She also remembered several times when foreign dignitaries from other members of the Heavenly Alliance came to New Kumogakure, and they would gazed at it in wonder, where they would often ask how he was able to build this massive size village, or city as some would call it, so quickly, in which the Raikage would just laugh each time and reply, "Jutsus can be used for more than just fighting." Yoruichi quickly went into the Raikage Tower mountain through the massive double stone doors that had 2 giant stone tigers flanking the doorways, in which the 2 stone tigers had Fuan Teppiki on them so that the doorway would be sealed shut when needed. When inside, it was not what most people would expect it to be, instead of being dark, dank, and cold. The main hall of the tower mountain looked like a palace hall. In the middle of it was a beautiful foundation with cool clear water and statues made of pure marble that resembled dragons, tigers, and falcons. There were benches made of solid marble in which the seats themselves were covered in soft leather. Light was coming through several large openings and was distributed all over the halls by both water and special light-emitting crystals that glowed softly, giving the tower mountain a very soft but strong amount of light. The walls were smooth and covered in small gems and inlaid with copper mirrors which appeared to be well polished, as well as silver and gold designs that made the place even more grandiose than before, and in the areas were healthy trees and bushes giving out a sweet scent to the tower mountain. The floors were made from tiles that combined marble, jade, and smooth limestone and were very strong. All in all, the main hall was impressive to say the least. When a person looked up, they would see all the different floor levels where different departments were on each level dealing with the different affairs in the running of the village, both civilian and shinobi matters. There were stairs and even lifts to get a person up to certain levels faster, which was a good thing since the Raikage Tower mountain was always busy with activity. At the top roof point of the tower mountain was a large glass dome that was directly above the fountain and shone more light down on it and the rest of the tower. It also allowed the stones in the fountain to sparkle in the light. Not only was Tower Mountain magnificent in the inside, it was also easily defendable, where just 3 squads of ninjas could easily hold out for months against an enemy army, since the main doors were made of stone and when shut could take massive poundings. They even had special seals on it that made them highly resistant against most jutsu. The inside of the tower was also covered 10 feet of solid rock. There was even several small openings for the defenders to fire arrows, spears or jutsu from down on the enemy, as well as many traps inside the tower for the enemy which could be activated should the enemy be able to breach the doors or somehow enter in Tower Mountain. Yoruichi quickly got on one of the lifts and soon arrived at the Raikage office, which was at the top floor of the Tower Mountain. She greeted his secretary Ai's Nanao, who was an old friend of hers, after which Nanao told her to go right ahead into his office. The Raikage office was simple. It was a large double-O circular-shaped room with his desk facing the main double door to his office and with a large window behind the desk so that the Raikage could look out the window and over the village. On both sides of the wall of the circular room in front of the Raikage desk were bookshelves filled with scrolls and books, as well as a small spiral stairs that would allow the Raikage to go to the platform of the second level of his bookshelves, as well as go onto the balcony that was right above the Raikage desk. It was then when she looked up to her left on the second level of the bookshelves that she saw him reading a scroll, after which she made herself notice, since he had yet to do so, since he was focused on the scroll he was reading. When he did notice her, he looked up and had a small smile on his face. He then spoke. "Good day, Yoruichi. I'm surprised that you arrived back so soon. I did not expect you back till at least this evening. I trust that the talks with the Saito Hajime went without much difficulty," said the Raikage politely as he made his way down the spiral stairs and seated himself in his seat behind his desk facing her. There was no real problem with the talks, although Saito and the rebel factions are hesitant to join forces with us as you expected. But I was able to arrange an agreement with Saito where in return for supplies of food, medicine, as well as a few other things, he and the other rebel factions are willing to give us detailed information on the Mizukage and the Mizu Daimyo, which includes any and all plans that they are making and information of their military strengths, said Yoruichi. This caused the Raikage to smile, since he knew that the information from Saito and his people would very useful in the near future against the Mizukage and the Mizu Daimyo, not to mention that this arrangement with the rebel factions would be an important stepping stone for a full alliance with them. Good work, Yoruichi. You did an excellent job. I knew you would, even if the rebel factions in Mizu ni Kuni are not fully allied with us. They are at least willing to share information with us, and with this agreement we can slowly gain their trust, and where we can then get a full alliance with them later on, said the Raikage. Raikage-sama, there's something else that you should know. Princess Sachi of Umi no Kuni has been captured by the Mizukage and the Mizu Daimyo forces 5 days ago, said Yoruichi. What? Shouted the Raikage in disbelief. Yoruichi then went and explained what her summon Hina had told her about what had happened to the princess. When she finished, the Raikage spoke in a serious tone of voice. Yoruichi, did you give Saito the projection ball like I asked you to? Yes, of course, answered Yoruichi. I even showed him how it works and what to do, she continued. The Raikage nodded and then went and opened up a small box on his desk. In the box was a small glass ball that had several seals carved on it. The ball was small enough to fit perfectly in the palm of his hand. Although the Raikage was not the type of person to brag about how skilled he was, he had to compliment himself on his skills in creating the projection ball. The projection ball worked as a two-way communication link for the Raikage, where if he needed to speak to one of his commanders or the leaders of an alliance member country or an allied country, all he would need to do would be to place the ball in his hand and think of the person he wanted to speak with, in which the other person ball would start to glow and heat up, telling them that someone wanted to speak to them, in which once they picked up the ball in their hand, an astral projection of the Raikage would appear in front of them, as would an astral projection of them appear to the Raikage. It would even work for other holders of the projections balls, where they could not only make contact with the Raikage but they could also make contact with one another. It also had a security measure where when a person first gets a projection ball, all they need to do would be to spread some of their blood on the ball and it would connect them with the other projection balls, and the ball they got would only work for them, since it only works for the person whose blood was spread on it first. The projection ball was based on a jutsu that he read about in one of his old sensei scrolls that was called the Gentoshin no Jutsu, magic lantern body technique. Although the scroll explained the basic of how the jutsu worked, it did not tell him how it was done, in which the Raikage then spent several years creating his own version of it with seals, which in the end proved successful. The Raikage quickly picked up the projection ball and closed his eyes and then reopened them again when an astral projection of Saito Hajime appeared in front of them. So this is how this thing works. I hate to admit it, but this is an impressive piece of fuinjutsu, commented Saito, in which he then looked up at the Raikage and raised his eyebrow. Huh. So you're the famed Rokudaime Raikage I've been hearing so much about, the famed the Raiden no Kami, the god of thunder and lightning, or as many shinobi in Kiri call you, the Arashi no Oni, the demon of storms. I have to admit I pictured someone a bit different from all the stories I heard about you, especially that rumor I heard recently where you defeated, said Saito, but before he could continue the Raikage interrupted him. Forgive me, Saito-san, but as much as I like to have a pleasant conversation with you about the things you heard about me, I must interrupt you since I wish to speak to you about the information that you had sent to Yoruichi, spoke the Raikage seriously. Fine. What is it that you want to know? Asked Saito. I would like you to give me a more detailed account on what happened and what the Mizukage and the Mizu Daimyo are planning on doing, since I guessing what you told to Yoruichi was just a basic overview of what happened, said the Raikage. Saito just nodded and then spent the next half hour explaining in detail what had happened, since an agent of one of the rebel factions in Mizu no Kuni was on board one of the ships when they attacked the princess ship. He also told them the names of Konoha ninjas that had been captured with her and that they were all being held in the hold Mizu no Kuni strongest prison. When Saito finished, the Raikage thanked him and told him that he send medical and food supplies to him and his forces within 2 weeks, and said that he may call on him for more information soon, which Saito just nodded and his astral projection disappeared. When Saito astral projection disappeared, a hardened look came across his face. Yoruichi knew this look well since she had fought with him in many battles during the Civil War. During the Civil War she became close friends with the Raikage and was considered one of his closest friends, as did she, hence she was able to know when he was angry or extremely serious about something, and the look on his face told her that he was planning something big and it would be serious. The Raikage quickly called for his secretary Nanao, in which she quickly entered the room. Nanao, I want you to send a message to all shinobi commanders and all major shinobi clan heads, as well as Lady Daimyo Kicho and Sensei. I want you to tell them that we are convening a war council in 2 hours' time, ordered the Raikage. This of course got a surprise gasp from both women, since there had not been a war council since the country final stabilized, when the Raikage was able to get all the remaining forces of the Godaime Raikage and Daimyo Yoshiaki to surrender and join the rebel factions. The only reason a war council would be held would be either to declare war on another country or plan a major military operation, either of which was possible right now. It took a few minutes for the two women to get out of their shock states, but they eventually did, in which Nanao quickly nodded her head and went to do what the Raikage ordered. The Raikage then turned to Yoruichi and told her to go get a bite to eat and have a shower and be ready for the war council since she would be expected there, after which the woman nodded and left the office, leaving the Raikage alone with his thoughts. Things are moving much faster than I had expected them to, but if I plan this right, I can turn this to our advantage and the Heavenly Alliance will have a few new members as well as a new ally, thought the Raikage as he started to work on the plan to rescue the princess and make both Kumo and the Heavenly Alliance stronger. 2 hours later, in the War Council Room, the War Council Room of Kumo was a large room inside the Raikage Tower mountain. It had a 30-foot tall entrance with 2 equally sized double wooden doors to close it to outsiders. Inside the middle of the room was a large wooded round table that would allow up to 30 people to sit around it. One of the chairs around the table was larger than the others and more elegant in design. That seat was reserved for the Raikage. There was also another seat behind the Raikage seat, which was on a large stone pedestal with a seat on it which overlooked the War Council table. This seat was for the Daimyo, in which the Daimyo would be allowed to watch over the council meeting if she wished to, and could add her input if it was required or asked. Also on the wall of the council room on the right-hand side of the War Council table was a map of the elemental continent and the entire island nations near it. The room itself had also seals in it to prevent anyone to outside the room to hear what was being said or what was going on in the room. Yoruichi was the first person to arrive in the War Council room, and as she entered, the 2 storm members guarding the door saluted her, which she replied in just. She then went and took her seat and put up her legs on the table to wait for the others to arrive, which was not long, since about 2 minutes after she arrived in the room, her former second-in-command Suafon entered the room. Suafon was a relatively short and petite woman with lightly tanned skin and black hair. She wore sleeveless white haori and a yellow obi tied around her waist. Underneath it she wore a tradition ninja outfit that has no sleeves and didn't cover her back. Her hair was worn short with 2 long braids covered in cloth. Suafon and Yoruichi had been friends for many years even before the beginning of the civil war in Kumo and Kaminari no Kuni. Before the civil war, Yoruichi was a Anbu captain of Kumo assassin division. Much like what she was now, Suafon had joined her division as a young gifted prodigy who saw Yoruichi as her hero and idol. Yoruichi later on took her on as an apprentice, in which they grew close, and Yoruichi saw her as a younger sister while Suafon thought of her as both an older sister and her idol. When the civil war started, Suafon followed Yoruichi along with many others from Yoruichi division and fought for the rebels. After the civil war ended, Suafon became the captain of the shock division. But even though they were equal rank, Suafon continued to regard Yoruichi as her superior and continued to call her Yoruichi-sama, which annoyed Yoruichi since she hated being called by old traditional titles like Sama, and Suafon knew that well. "Hello Yuichi-sama, it's good to see you back," said Suafon politely. Yoruichi just signed and said, "How many times do I have to tell you, Suafon, to stop calling me that? We are equal rank now, and even when I took you as my apprentice I told you not to call me that. You know how much I hate being called by those stuffy old title names. Even that husband of yours doesn't like being called like that when he off duty. But what's wrong with calling you Yoruichi-sama? Yoruichi-sama. I'm only showing you respect, Yoruichi-sama. You can't possibly hate being called Yoruichi-sama that much. Yoruichi-sama," said Suafon with a small smirk on her face when she saw Yoruichi eyebrow twitch with annoyance, since she loved to annoy her like this after all the times Yoruichi used to tease and annoy her, since Suafon knew how much things like that annoyed her former sensei and surrogate big sister. Yoruichi just sighed again with annoyance and said, "I swear you're getting more and more like that husband of yours, especially when he gets in the mood to annoy someone. Whatever happened to that stiff-ass young girl who always followed orders and didn't question why and hardly ever lightened up? I believe she left after a few years of being your apprentice, since a bit of you had to rub off me as well as when I got married," answered Suafon with a small smile, after which the two women then started to laugh a bit but soon after stopped and got serious. "So the war council has finally been called again. Do you know why?" asked Suafon, to which Yoruichi nodded and said, "Yes I do, but I believe that it best to wait till he and all the others arrive, since he can give you the full detail of what's happening and what he plans to do." Suafon just nodded, understanding that she would find out what was happening soon enough. The two women were soon joined by Hayabusa Araya, head of the Storm Anbu division of Kumo, as well head of the Hayabusa clan. Although the Hayabusa clan held no blood limit, they were the best assassins and fighters in all of Kumo, which Yoruichi knew well since most of her best men and women were from that clan. The Hayabusa clan ninjas also made up a large fraction of the Storm division as well. This was because at a very young age all children in the Hayabusa clan were trained to be shinobis, where they went through harsh training so that they would be as strong and skilled as they could be. The clan was also extremely loyal to the Raikage due to that fact that during the civil war the Hayabusa clan sided with the rebels, in which at a late point in the war the Godime Raikage found the secret base of Hayabusa clan where their families stayed. He then tricked most of the clan's shinobi to leave it, in which he sent a large force of his ninjas to attack the base and destroy it, and captured as many of the women and children as possible so to hold them as hostages, so to force the Hayabusa clan to fight for him and control them. Fortunately the Raikage had been near the base and was able to drive back the Godime forces, and when the Hayabusa clan shinobis returned and found out what happened, Hayabusa Joe, Ru father and clan head of the Hayabusa clan before he was killed in battle near the end of the civil war, swore a blood oath that he and his clan would serve and protect the Raikage and his future clan until they repaid the debt that they owed him for saving their families. Despite his age, Ru had the demeanor of a man far older than himself and often spoke with great wisdom, which many people would stay silent to listen to. This was due to his prolific lineage and mantle of station as the head of a highly respected shinobi clan in Kumo as well as in other nations. His exploits from the Civil War and before it had given him an attitude far removed from most others, and he understood things in more abstract and philosophical terms. He had a tranquil nature, much akin to water, free-flowing most of the time, but unforgiving and crushing when roused, in which many people would often try and stay on his good side. Although not often, he would join many of shinobi commanders in a few social drinks of sake now and again. He was even married to the daughter of the head of the Mugen Tenshin ninja clan, Kasumi, since both their clans had always good strong relations with one another. Ru wore a tight black leather outfit with no sleeves, black leather boots, fingerless gloves on his hands, gauntlets on his arm, a cape on his back, and wore a mask to cover most of his face, as well as wear his own clan unique headband with the Kumo symbol on it. He also carried a sword on his back and kunais on his left leg. Altogether, Ru was dressed like what most people expected a ninja to look like, which was not surprising since the Hayabusa clan took their title as a ninja clan very serious. When Ru saw both women, he greeted them politely and then settled down in his seat on the table. Soon after, they were joined by Shiden, leader of the Mugen Tenshin clan, who were among Kumo top ninja clans. They were well known for the unique fighting styles, the Tenjinmon and the Hajinmon, which allowed them to gain incredible strength and power. Like Hayabusa clan, the Mugen Tenshin clan fought with the rebel factions due to their close ties with the Hayabusa clan, which only got stronger with the marriage between his daughter Kasumi and Ru. Just after Shiden arrived, two other people arrived. They were Akechi Mitsuhide and Miyoshi Sayuri. Akechi Mitsuhide was the county chief of operations for all the shinobi forces, where he would help decided who would go on what missions and could only be overruled by the Raikage. Also, should the Raikage be unable to run or organize the shinobi forces, Mitsuhide would take full control of the shinobi forces. Mitsuhide was a very handsome man. Despite being in his early 30s, he still looked like a man in his mid-20s. He had a narrow but well-sculpted face and had long black raven-colored hair and clear blue eyes. Mitsuhide wore white shinobi pants with sliver knee pads and boots. He also wore a white shirt with silver samurai-like armor and had a white cloak and carried a long katana that he called Gilded Talon. Mitsuhide was also one of the first teachers to the Raikage back before he became Raikage. Mitsuhide was a former member of the Kiri no Shinobugatana Nananin Shu, Seven Swordsmen of the Mist. Before he became a missing nin, Mitsuhide was credited with being one of the greatest prodigies of his time in Kiri, since at age 13 he became head of the Oinin division. When he was 15, he became a jonin and a member of the Kiri no Shinobugatana Nananin Shu. It was also said that he was a prodigy of the sword, in which he mastered at a very young age the fighting style of his clan, the Taka Kyukoka, the Swooping Hawk. He also earned the nickname of Shirotakai no Kiri, Mist White Death, since he wore a white cloak and armor. During his time as head of the Oinin division, virtually all of Kiri missing nin were eliminated within weeks of going rogue, but after he went rogue himself, the efficiency of Kiri Oinin division went down greatly, which caused for Kiri to have the highest amount of missing nin from its village than in any other shinobi nation. Mitsuhide also had a dojutsu called the Takagen Hawkeye, which gives the user the ability to see great distances, keep up with great speeds, see through genjutsu and see through objects, much like the Hyuga clan Byakugan and the Uchiha clan Sharingan, as well as allowing the user to hit an object with 99.99% accuracy no matter how small or how far the object was, which was why the Akechi clan were so famed in Kiri as assassins. Mitsuhide was also one of the few in his clan to activate the second level of the Takagen, which allowed the user to see even greater distance than before, but also allowed him to see an object or person weakest points, which if hit he could destroy a boulder with just hitting it weak point with a single strike, as well as disable or even kill a person with one strike, whether it be a hand strike or a sword strike, by seeing the weakest point of their body. Unfortunately, Mitsuhide was also the last of his clan, since during the early parts of the Bloodline Crusade in Kiri his clan was wiped out, in which he was forced into hiding until near the end of the crusade, where he avenged his clan by killing 300 Bloodline Hunters, which was nearly the entire Bloodline Hunter division, in a single night when they were at their main base in Kiri. After the attack, Mitsuhide was declared an S-rank missing ninja with an engaged with caution warning on him. Later on, during the civil war in Kumo and Kaminari no Kuni, he won great fame and respect when he joined the rebel factions of Kaminari no Kuni and Kumo, as well as earned the nickname Kumo no Shirotaka, White Falcon of Cloud. The woman with Mitsuhide was his long-time childhood friend and partner Miyoshi Sayuri, who like Mitsuhide helped to train the Raikage back before he became the Raikage. Also, like Mitsuhide, she was the county chief of operations for all the shinobi forces. She was also formerly of Kiri, where she was his genin partner back when they were younger. Both rose through the ranks and both became members of the Kiri no Shinobugatana Nananin Shu. Like Mitsuhide, Sayuri was a highly gifted shinobi in which she mastered the sword art of dual-bladed sword fighting. She also had a bloodline called Shitaikiri Kitai, the mist body vapor, which allows her to turn her body into a mist-like vapor. When in this form, she couldn't be harmed by any physical weapon, and it allows her to go through even the smallest of cracks and holes to infiltrate enemy bases, forts and castles. She could also enter a person body through their mouth and drain all the liquids from the person body, leaving the person noting more than a dry husk. This of course made the Miyoshi clan valuable infiltrators and assassins, and like the Akechi clan, her clan had been wiped out quickly by the bloodline hunters, in which later on she avenged her clan by killing the entire Kiri council who supported the Yodai Mizukage slaughter of bloodline users and had ordered her clan's massacre. After slaughtering the Kiri council, Sayuri was made an A-rank missing ninja, and like Mitsuhide had engaged with caution warning on her. Back when she was with Kiri, Sayuri was known as the Kiri no Shinkutakai Crimson Death of Mist, and when she joined the rebel factions in Kaminari no Kuni and Kumo, she became known as Shinkukiri no Kumo Clouds Crimson Mist. Sayuri wore brown leather pants with brown leather boots. She also wore a white midriff top with long sleeves, that showed her figure quite nicely, and had a short cloak. She also carried two short curved swords that she had holsters for each one on her legs. Sayuri had a sharp yet attractive face, short crimson-red hair in which it fell down her face slightly and covered the left-hand side of her face, and she had bright green eyes. It had also been greatly rumored that both Mitsuhide and Sayuri were lovers, since neither were very often seen without the other, while others just believed that they were close friends, but no one had the courage to ask them straight out since they did not want to get on either of the bad sides. Both Mitsuhide and Sayuri greeted the members who had already entered the war council room and took their seats near the Raikage seat. Not long after Mitsuhide and Sayuri, three more people arrived. They were Joyu, Ganning and Sunli. All three of them commanded aspects of Kumo and Kaminari no Kuni naval forces. Ganning was the leader of the Ning clan and commander of Kumo fleet. He was also the best sea captain in all of the Heavenly Alliance and was also a former sea pirate. He was originally from Kiri and was from the Ning clan, who painted animal tattoos on their bodies and used special jutsus that were used by only their clan that allowed the animals on their bodies to come to life, much like Choju Giga, viz. Super Beast's imitation picture, and return to their bodies when they were destroyed or were called back to their wielder. They could also control the animals with their thoughts and see what their animals could see as well. When the Bloodline Crusade began, his clan fled Mizu no Kuni since they feared people would consider their clan jutsu as a bloodline and start to attack them. The Ning clan fled to a small island where they were forced to become pirates so that they would survive. During the civil war in Kumo and Kaminari no Kuni, he and his men tried to raid a dock belonging to one of the rebel factions but were captured by Denku. The name the Raikage went by before he became the Raikage. When Ganning explained why he was raiding the dock, Denku gave him a choice: become the new leader of the rebel faction's fleet and have his clan join the rebel factions and have a chance of having a new home to live in, or spend the rest of his life in prison while his clan would be hunted down and destroyed by Kiri or some other nation, or starve to death with no food or supplies. Ganning had little choice but to agree. During the Civil War he won great fame for his seafaring skill and ability to command ships and men, as well as leading raids on docks and ships belonging to Todaimayo Yoshiaki and the Godime Raikage. After the Civil War ended, Ganning was made commander of Kumo fleet and captain of his own ship. Personality-wise, Ganning was a man of action who didn't like to adjust to proper etiquette. He was also wild and fearless, as well as a brilliant leader of men, and was only really satisfied with a good brawl or battle. He was also confident in his abilities and, though he seemed arrogant, he had a good head on his shoulders and proved it many times in battle and knew when to rely on teamwork. However, he was fickle about who he take orders from, although there were several people he did not mind taking orders from, for example the Raikage, since Ganning respected him a great deal. Ganning wore loose-fitting shinobi-like pants and normal boots. He also wore a sleeveless vest and a ribbon that acted as a belt for him. He also had bandages around his stomach and worn the Kumo headband around his head. He even worn bells around his neck, say that they allow his enemies to know when the bell tolls for them. Ganning had brown spiky hair and had a roughish-looking face. He also had tattoos of animals all over his body. He even carried a large curved sword that looked like a large cutting knife, and he called the sword Leviathan. Sunli was the commander of Kumo submarine fleet and underwater shinobi fighting force Aqua, which was a force created to counter Kiri underwater fighting force Shark. Sunli was originally from a well-off sea merchant family, and when the Civil War started, her family sided with the Godime Raikage and Daimyo Yoshiaki, while she herself joined the rebel factions and became a very skilled shinobi. During the Civil War she became an excellent commander of men, and due to her experience in ships, and was the one who suggested to create Kumo-owned counter forces of underwater fighters, which she was given command of, as well as command of Kumo submarine fleet when the Civil War ended. Personality-wise, Sunli was upbeat and independent woman who was considered to be a tomboyish by many people. She was loving and loyal to her friends and family, who were pardoned for siding against the rebel factions. She was always eager to lend a helping hand to others and frequently wanted to prove her worth in battle, which often caused her husband to worry. Sun Li was also very beautiful. She had short brown hair and emerald green eyes and a curvy body. Her clothing also reflected her personality since it gave her a tomboyish look. She had a tight red top and shorts, with matching socks and shoes, and wore a kumo headband on her head with the symbol cloth being red instead of brown. Zhou Yu was the supreme commander of all Kaminari no Kuni naval forces, and although he mainly only commanded Kaminari no Kuni naval forces, under wartime emergencies or events he would be given overall command of Kumos and all the other members of the Heavenly Alliance naval forces. This was due to the fact that Zhou Yu was one of the most brilliant naval strategic commanders in the elemental continent. He was also highly skilled in the ninja arts of combat, but was not a ninja of Kumo. He was also a highly skilled user in fire techniques. During the Civil War, Zhou Yu fought for Daimyo Yoshiaki and he commanded his fleets as well as Kumo. Despite not liking either Daimyo Yoshiaki or the Godime Raikage, he remained loyal to them due to they were still the rightful rulers of Kumo and Kaminari no Kuni, in which he won many naval victories as well as nearly destroying the rebel fleet on severely occasions during the Civil War, and kept the seas of Kaminari no Kuni virtually completely under Daimyo Yoshiaki and the Godime Raikage control. It was not until Anasu, the famed Kumo no Ashiryu, Ice Dragon of Kumo, and Ganning joined the rebel factions did the tide turn against him, in which during the Battle of Eagles Peak most of his fleet had been destroyed by Anasu. When the Civil War ended, Zhou Yu had been taken prisoner, in which he was later on offered the rank Supreme Commander of Kaminari no Kuni naval forces, which naturally caught him by surprise since he had expected to be executed or in prison for the rest of his life for siding against the rebel factions. It was later on that he learned that despite the fact he fought against them, he had earned a great deal of respect from the Raikage and other rebel factions due to always taking prisoner from destroyed enemy ships instead of letting them drown, giving plenty of food, clothing and medical supplies for the prisoners, and always fought with honor and allowed enemy ships to surrender and did not fire on retreating ships or civilian ports and ships carrying civilians like some fleet commanders did. Personality-wise, he was a man who valued honor most of all. He was also very loyal to his friends and country, as well as very intelligent man and a keen strategist. He was also a lover of music and was known well for playing the flute extremely well. Zhou Yu was also an extremely attractive man. He had long brown hair, dark brown eyes, and was very handsome, where many girls tried to win his affection. He wore tradition clothing for someone of the royal court. 7. Zhou also wielded a straight thin narrow sword with a red dragon carved on the blade. All three quickly sat down, greeting the people who were in so far in their own way with a slight nod of the head in greet from Zhou Yu, a friendly smile from Sun Li, and a grin Gan Ning. The remaining other 7 clan heads entered right after Zhou Yu and the others. They were Kuchiki Byakuya of the Kuchiki clan, Godo Kisaragi of the Kisaragi clan, Kai Wengi of the Wengi clan, Ishida Rukan of the Ishida clan, Tatara Reito of the Tatara clan, Yuki Nadi of the Yuki clan, and Zhao Yun of the Yun clan. Godo Kisaragi was leader of the Kisaragi clan. He was a fiercely proud man, as were his clan members. They had fled their country Wute when it was conquered by a more powerful country, in which they became a wandering clan. It was just when the civil war in Kumo and Kaminari no Kuni ended and the rebuilding and stabilization of the country was beginning that Godo Kisaragi and his clan offered their services to help the country in return of allowing them to stay, in which both Lady Daimyo Kicho and the Raikage agreed to. The Kisaragi clan was well known for having several very powerful summoning contracts that they could use, which made them quite powerful in their own right. Kai Wengi was the leader of the Wengi clan. She was a powerful woman who had an aura of strength and nobility around her and was well respected by everyone. She was a powerful genjutsu mistress as well as an extremely powerful wind mistress. Kai Wengi was a woman of strong conviction and always did what she believed to be best for her clan no matter what it cost her. She also valued loyalty and showed respect to those who she believed worthy of it. Originally she and her clan were from Suna but were forced to leave the village when they learned that the Yondaime Kazekage was planning to have them killed and claimed that they were traitors. For about 14 years Kai Wengi and her clan wandered around the elemental continent, where they eventually joined in the civil war in Kumo and Kaminari no Kuni with the Daimyo Yoshiaki and the Godime Raikage, with the promise of a new home and a position as a powerful clan when the civil war ended. Although when they lost they were forgiven by the Rokudime Raikage, and he offered them the same deal, which the Wengi clan accepted and swore loyalty to the Raikage since they had been touched by the Raikage forgiveness and generosity. Although it was not well known, the reason why the Wengi clan fled Suna was because the Wengi clan had been the guardians of the demon Ichibi no Shukaku, one-tailed Shukaku, and were sworn to keep it from harming the people of Suna. After seeing the destruction that the former host of the Ichibi no Shukaku caused, the Wengi clan pleaded with the Sandaime Kazekage to not create another Jinchuriki, since all it would do would drive the host mad, like it did to the monk that the Ichibi no Shukaku was sealed in, and create another unstable Jinchuriki that would threaten sooner. The Sandaime Kazekage eventually agreed to seal up the demon back into the tea kettle, but when the Sandaime Kazekage disappeared, secretly killed by Sasori, and replaced by the Yondaime Kazekage, the agreement was nullified. The Yondaime Kazekage sealed the Ichibi no Shukaku into his newborn son despite the Wengi clan objections and warnings. Eventually, when the Yondaime Kazekage realized that the Wengi clan had been right all along, he ordered for his son to be killed, but all attempts failed. When the Wengi clan heard what the Yondaime Kazekage was planning, they offered to take Gaara into their clan and train him and help him control the Ichibi no Shukaku, since they saw how bad his life was and how he struggled to control his power and knew he wasn't a demon, and they felt responsible for him. But the Yondaime Kazekage forbid this, since back when he had the Ichibi no Shukaku first sealed into his son, he forbade that any member of the Wengi clan to come near his son. The reason for this was because the Yondaime Kazekage feared that the Wengi clan would use their knowledge of the Ichibi no Shukaku and build a bond between Gaara and their clan, in which they would train him to become a weapon for them to use to take control of the village for them. Eventually, the Yondaime Kazekage had order for the Wengi clan to be wiped out under the guise that they were planning a coup d'état. Fortunately, they were able to find out about it before the order could be carried out. They had even tried to take Gaara with them, but on the night they fled, Gaara's uncle Yashimaru tried to kill him under the orders of his father, and the men that were sent to take Gaara could not get near him since he became completely unhinged by his uncle's betrayal and attack and could not get near him, which resulted in them leaving him in the village. The Wengi clan also were the only people known except for Gaara to be able to use Sabuton, sand release. It was believed that due to their knowledge of the Ichibi no Shukaku and its abilities that they knew how to do Sabuton, although despite this knowledge they are not able to use Sabuton to the same level as Gaara could. Kai Wengi wore 8. She also carried a long straight narrow sword and a large battle fan on her back. Kuchiki Byakuya was the leader of the Kuchiki clan, which was one of the founding clans of the Kumo and one of the 5 clans in Kaminari no Kuni or Kumo that had a Kekkei Genkai, although that had changed after the civil war ended. The Kuchiki clan had a bloodline that was similar to the of Tthe Shodaime Hokage Mokuton would release. Their abilities was to be able to control plants and do plant jutsu. The ability was called Kubaton, plant release. Similar to the Shodaime Hokage Mokuton, the Kubaton allowed a person to create plants out of the ground and control them in any way they wished. They could even create giant plants that could devour a man if they wished to. Although despite their ability only a quarter of the clan could do it, with the majority being unable, the only ability that all members of the Kuchiki clan shared was their high control over their chakra. Byakuya was a very handsome man where many women from important families often tried to gain his attention but failed since he had never gotten over the loss of his wife during the Civil War. During the Civil War, the Kuchiki clan fought for the Godime Raikage due to despite what he did, he was still the rightful leader of Kumo, but eventually when they learned some of the other crimes that the Godime Raikage and Daimyo Yoshiaki had done, after which they sided with the rebels factions near the end of the Civil War and helped give them valuable information on the Godime Raikage and Daimyo Yoshiaki plans. Byakuya himself was by far the most powerful and gifted member of his clan and was said to be the greatest prodigy to be born in the clan in almost 100 years. It is also said that he was strongest member in his clan to be ever born, since he had complete mastery of the Kubaton to a level far beyond any other clan member, where he could channel his chakra into thousands of flower petals or even tree leaves and control them all at once and have them spin so fast and that they would act like thousands of small blades cutting his enemies to pieces. He is even a master genjutsu user. Personality-wise, Byakuya acted in an aristocratic manner. He seemed always serene and apathetic towards other people, even when he was deeply conflicted. He was also extremely calm, even in battle, and was very seldom surprised by even the most drastic of actions. This was due in part to his status in Kumo as the leader of one of Kumo's most noble clans. He generally acted indifferent, bordering on arrogance, to most situations that he faced, where he rarely viewed his enemies or other people worth his time. But despite this trait, Byakuya was a very perceptive man and was fully aware of the limits of his abilities, and usually anything he would state in comparison to a person was justified. Byakuya also strongly believed in law and order and believed that shinobis should do whatever it takes to protect their home and their people from harm. In spite of his icy and regal manner, Byakuya cared for and protects those important to him, which includes family and friends, since despite his cold manner he does have several friends that he cares about. Byakuya wore a white shitagi, a black kasode, a black hakama, a white hakama himo, white tabi, and waraji and a white haori over the black kasode. He also kept his long shoulder-length black hair in a white headpiece called a kenseiken. He also wore fingerless white gloves that covered only the back of his hands and wore a scarf made from the silver white, windflower light silk, which was a family heirloom that was handed down from generation to generation and was given to each Kuchiki family head. The scarf alone was worth enough to buy 10 mansions in New Kumogakur. Byakuya was also a highly skilled swordmaster where he carried a regular katana, with a simple cross guard, which is a simple open frame, much like a 4-pane window. It had a light blue handle. Tatara Hamryo was the leader of the Tatara clan. Hamryo only recently became the leader of the Tatara clan since his grandfather retired as head of the clan and handed it to him. Although Hamryo was the youngest member of the War Council since he was only 18, he was a competent leader and an excellent fighter, which earned him some respect from the other members, although he did not enjoy meetings like these since he preferred to be out on the field doing missions. The Tatara clan was a new clan that joined Kumo during the Civil War. Originally the Tatara clan isolated themselves from the world when the shinobi villages were first formed, since they did not want to join any village but knew that they would either be forced to join or wiped out in case they became a threat to one of the villages. The Tatara clan hid themselves in a small hidden valley in the mountain ranges of Kumo. It was not until the Civil War began that they were discovered by the Godime Raikage forces. When he learned of their existence, he offered them a place to join Kumo, but they refused, not wanting to join the civil war. Soon after, the Godime Raikage sent a large force of ninjas to destroy them and capture a few members of the clan so that he could breed a new clan under his control later on. Although the attack on the clan was successful, where 300 members of the clan were killed and about 70 others were taken prisoner, 200 members of the Tatara clan were able to escape. Hamryo's father as well as most of his family had been killed in that attack, where only his grandfather had survived and led the remainder of their clan to the rebel factions and joined them to avenge what the Godime Raikage had done and to rescue their captured clan members, which they eventually did. During the Civil War, the Tatara clan won great respect and renown by using their Kekkei Genkai to great effect. The Tatara clan bloodline was called the Koten, steel release. This bloodline allowed them to manipulate anything metal into any form they want it to be. They could reform metal into almost any kind of weapon or tool they needed. They could also make their bodies as hard as steel. This of course made the clan extremely valuable as ninjas and allies, where after the Civil War they joined Kumo. Personality-wise, Hamryo was a confident young man, borderline cocky. He also rarely lost his calm exterior and was quite intelligent for his age, although he was also eager for action and to prove himself in battle. He was the most gifted user in his clan fighting style and bloodline, where he mastered all his clan's techniques and created some of his own, which proved that he was ready to be clan head. Hamryo's only real defect was that he loved to flirt with pretty girls, which made all the worse since he was quite popular with the girls due to his good looks and cool personality, although he did know when to get serious, and this war council meeting was one of those times when he got serious. Hamryo had black spiky hair and had metal piercings on his ears and above his left eye. He also had dark brown eyes. He wore a light brown jacket and jeans and a blood red shirt underneath his jacket. He also had black boots on and carried a heavy metal skull chain around his neck and a metal chain around his waist so that he have metal to manipulate if caught in battle unprepared. Yuki Nadi was the leader of the Yuki clan. The Yuki clan had been created when large number of people had been subjected to experiments by the Godime Raikage scientists during the Civil War to try and create new bloodlines by experimenting with people genes with different experiments and using experimental formulas on them. In the end, the experiments, hundreds of people died from them and 2 new bloodlines were created. The first was the Yuki clan's bloodline, which enabled its members to pass through solid matter without harm. When this first bloodline was created, the Godime Raikage ordered his scientists create more people with this ability, so to create an entire clan of the perfect assassins. During that time 220 people were given this ability and were trained to use it to its full extent. Fortunately, Denku, what the Rokodime Raikage was called before he became the Raikage, and the rebels factions found out about the experiments and attacked the base where the experiments were being done and freed all those who were being experimented on, after which they quickly joined the rebel factions to get revenge on the Godime Raikage for what he did to them and for all their friends and families that died during the experiments. After the Civil War, all those with the ability to pass through solid matter without harm decided to form a clan and decided to call their clan the Yuki clan and call their ability Suka no Iki, the passing through spirit limit. They then Madanadi their leader since she was the one to gather them together as a clan and she was the first one to have this ability. Nadi was a young woman who was highly intelligent as well as caring, respectful to other and quick-witty. She was also highly lethal in combat and at using her abilities to their full extent, in which she earned the nickname Ray Ghost. She wore traditional brown shinobi pants and sandals as well as brown hooded jacket with a fishnet shirt underneath it and 2 wrist blades on each arm for quickly silently killing any enemies. Ashida Rukan was the leader of the Ashida clan, and like the Yuki clan, the Ashida clan had been created due to experiments by the Godime Raikage scientists on people to create new bloodlines. The Ashida bloodline was the second to be created. The new bloodline that the Ashida clan could use was the ability to create weapons out of chakra, it allowing them to pierce or slice through any armor or weapon. They also had large amount of chakra reserves and all had flawless control over it. The more skilled members could even draw chakra from around them if they were low on chakra. When the Godime Raikage heard of these abilities, he ordered for more like them to be created and trained to use their new abilities, much like with the Yuki clan, in which 270 people were given these abilities. When the base that they were being held was liberated by the rebel factions, they joined the rebel factions for much of the same reason as the Yuki clan did. After the civil war, all those with the abilities to create weapons out of chakra decided to form the Ashida clan and decided to call their ability the Reryoku no Suju, manipulating spirit power limit. They also decided to make Yukan as the clan head since he was the most powerful of all its members of the new clan. To most people, Rukan was a cold man who cared for nothing, yet those that knew him knew he cared deeply for clan and family since it was his reasonability to lead and protect them. He did not speak much and would only make his opinion known when it was needed or asked. He was also the very serious type of man who would take any threat to the safety of his clan or Kumo very serious. Rukan wore a typical outfit that all Ashida clan members wore, which was a white, form-fitting, high-collared tunic with a blue cross symbol on his back, which was frequently on all the Ashida clan members' uniforms. Zhao Yun was leader of the Yun clan, who before the civil war were considered the most powerful clan in Kaminari no Kuni and are still considered that by many. The Yun clan was also one of the 5 only no clans to have a bloodline before the civil war started, although that changed when it ended. The Yun clan bloodline was called Ryotan, dragon release, which gave them increased strength, speed and power as well as to be able to transform into humanoid-like dragons, increasing their power exponentially. They even had a summoning contract for dragons. Although considered by many as ninja clan, the Yun clan fought more like samurai than ninjas since they wore armor in battle and used weapons like spears, axes and long swords in battle, although they also used ninjutsu and had their own types of ninjutsu. Also, the Yun clan were not a clan in Kumo but were a clan that served and protected the royal family of Kaminari no Kuni, although some members joined Kumo to be ninjas. During the civil war, the Yun clan fought for Daimyo Yoshiaki even when it was learned that he was the one who had his brother and his family murdered, as well as many of their kinsmen and women who were with Daimyo Dozan and his family when they were killed. This was because they were swore to protect and serve the Satic royal family. But when it was learned that the Lady Kicho had survived the attack and was with the rebel factions to overthrow her uncle and reclaim Kaminari no Kuni, they quickly left and joined the rebel factions with as many warriors and samurai that were loyal to Lady Kicho's father. After the civil war, Zhao Yun was made the captain of Lady Daimyo Kicho Royal Guard. Later on, the Yun clan became an official clan of Kumo, where half of the clan were ninjas under the Raikage and the other half were the guardians of Lady Daimyo Kicho and served her. Zhao Yun was a man that was held in high regard by everyone in Kaminari no Kuni and Kumo and was one of the great war heroes of the civil war. He was a man held honor, virtue and justice as the most important things. He was an extremely trustworthy man whom people could always depended on and was fearless and would never give up hope even against the most impossible odds. He was an extremely handsome man where women would often flock to see him. He wore 9. He also carried an extendable spear that could be easily carried on a utility belt, and when taken out and flicked the switch on it, it would extend into a long spear. 10. He even earned the nickname the Ryugan no Kumo, the Silver Dragon of Cloud. After the clan heads all arrived, 2 more people came in. They were Lu Xun and Hiki Kanyuho, commanded Kumo air forces. Lu Xun was the commander of the air fleet of Kumo and Kaminari no Kuni. Although he was young, he was a highly skilled strategist and a former apprentice to Zhou Yu. Like Zhou Yu, Lu Xun fought against the rebel factions and for Daimyo Yoshiaki and the Godime Raikage. He was a highly skilled user in fire techniques like Zhou Yu but wasn't a ninja. He was also skilled in double sword fighting. When the civil war ended, he was pardoned for fighting against the rebel factions and was even given command of Kumo new airship fleet due to earning respect from the rebels faction for treating all prisoners respectfully and honoring the code of conduct in war by not targeting civilian cities and villages, much like his sensei Zhou Yu. Lu Xun was a formal and humble person. He was also quick-witted and perceptive and believed in seeing the big picture. His outstanding talents and youthful energy helped inspire those around him, where he always tried to see the best in every person, be they ally or foe. He'd address disasters with a prudent and sincere manner, always strived for an optimistic solution to the situation. Lu Xun War 11. Hickey Kane was the commander of Kumo Skyhawk Ninjas, which was a special force of ninja trained to use special portable wing gliders that would fold up on a person back like a backpack and then extend like wings when launched into the air through specially built catapults on the airships, Fortress Ships 12, and on the ground. The Skyhawk Ninjas could then glide through the air firing bombs, kunais and jutsus down on the enemy or even fly over enemy walls and scout for enemies from the air. 13. They could even feed a small portion of the chakra into the portable wing gliders through the special chakra-absorbing metal that the portable wing gliders were made out of to keep them in the air even if there was not much wind in the air. It worked on a very similar manner of the Sky Ninja's gliders, but unlike theirs, the Skyhawk Ninja portable wing gliders did not need much chakra to keep them in the air, since the portable wing gliders were not as heavy as the Sky Ninja's gliders, although despite that the portable wing gliders were not as fast or maneuverable as the Sky Ninja's gliders. Kane was one of the first ninjas to become a Skyhawk Ninja and was a top ace flyer when in the air, in which he quickly became the unit first commander. He was an energetic young man who was almost fanatically loyal to Kumo and the Raikage. He was also quick-witted and eager to go on mission, yet he also could analogize a situation very quickly and stay calm in even the most stressful situations. Kane wore a standard Anbu outfit with body armor, black vest and shinobi pants. Soon after Lu Xun and Hickey Kane, Unohana Ritsu and Yukai Masato, who appeared by Shunshin no Jutsu, body flicker technique, entered the room. Unohana Ritsu was the head of Kumo Hospitals and of it Medical Nin Corp. Ritsu was not from Kumo or Kaminari no Kuni. She was a traveling medic who traveled around the element continent treating people for any illness or injury. During the civil war in Kumo and Kaminari no Kuni, she was able to get into the country before the borders were sealed, in which she then started to treat ninjas, warriors and samurai alike on both sides for wounds they had gotten from battle, since she did not care who they fought for. If they were injured and needed help, she would help them. She even took in and trained my young people who had been orphaned due to the civil war as her apprentices to help her when caring and healing the wounded or sick. She would often go to a battlefield when a battle was over and treat the wounded, in which she had saved many lives that would have died had it not been for her. It was because of this that she earned the nickname Chiyunomgami, goddess of healing. Thanks to her healing and saving so many lives on both sides, she earned the respective hundreds ninjas, warriors and samurai alike on both sides. Even when Daimyo Yoshiaki and the Godime Raikage ordered their men to attack her or one of her medical stations that she had set up with her apprentices, most of the time the commanders and the men would refuse or make up excuses to not attack out of respect and gratitude for what she had done for them. Although she was a healer, Ritsu was also a shinobi and a highly skilled one at that, since when she was younger she had met with Suin the Slug Princess when she was on her travels with her apprentice Shizune, where she was able to get her to agree to train her. Ritsu spent several years training under Sunid, learning everything that Sunid was willing to teach her, and after several years she parted ways with Suin to become a great medic on her own. From her training with Suin, Ritsu became a highly skilled medic nin in both healing and in combat, which she had shown when on a few occasions she defended herself or her patients from Daimyo Yoshiaki and the Godime Raikage men, whom later greatly regretted following Daimyo Yoshiaki and the Godime Raikage orders due to the massive beatings they got from fighting her, since it had been rumored that Ritsu was on par with Suin herself in healing and in fighting. Although despite this Ritsu did not like to hurt or kill people, she considered herself a healer first and a shinobi second, saying, "It is easily to destroy something or take lives, but to save lives and heal others is harder, which is why it is the better." Ritsu had a gentle and warm personality that augments her appearance. She was soft-spoken, polite, and a caring woman who used honorifics when addressing everyone, including her subordinates and enemies. She rarely showed any signs of panic or distress, and had a great sense of duty when it came to healing people. With her grace and kind manners, she would also let others know quietly that while she may be soft, she was not to be taken lightly. Since despite her gentle nature, many shinobi, samurai and warriors feared her, that included her fellow commanders, and even the Raikage himself would not wish to be on the receiving of her wrath. Since according to most of the commanders, respectively, she can be extremely frightening and terrifying all at the same time, since many people agreed that they would never want to get on her bad side, most stating that fighting the Kyuubi himself and being destroyed by it would be a much more preferable fate than being on her bad side. When the civil war ended, the Raikage asked her to join Kumo and become head of its hospitals. He even offered her the chance to set up a medic nin program and give her complete control over it. Ritsu agreed to the offer, although she also had some other conditions which the Raikage agreed to. The program had created with the help of her apprentices a large number of medic nins, and it became policy for each shinobi team to have a medic nin on it, which was proving to be a highly successful in reducing the loss of shinobis on missions. Yukai Masato was the head of CIND. He was an expert in infiltration, assassination and at gathering information, as well as misleading people with false information. Masato was not from Kumo. He was originally from the streets of Ta no Kuni. He was then taken in by Orochimaru since he had shown Orochimaru that he had some potential as a ninja. He was then experimented on by Orochimaru, who implanted some cells of a demon, which he had gotten from the corpse of a dead demon, into his body to see if he could create a ninjas with the powers of a demon. The experiments had worked, in which Masato had increased speed, strength, agility and power, as well as being able to transform into a demon-like creature. But when Masato found out what Orochimaru had done to him, he destroyed the lab and the research on the project and then fled, but not before vowing to one day make Orochimaru pay for what he did to him. For several years he roamed alone, traveling around the elemental continent and training himself. Eventually he arrived in Kaminari no Kuni just when the civil war started, and was forced to hide in the mountains since the borders of the country were blocked and no one could get out or in. Eventually, at some point when hiding from a large force of ninjas loyal to the Godime Raikage, Denku, the name the Rokudaime Raikage went by before he became the Raikage, had been wounded from an earlier fight and came across the cave that Masato was hiding in. Masato helped give Denku some medical aid to help him heal his wounds. Over the following days, hiding from the enemy ninjas, Denku and Masato talked and got to know one another. Eventually they became friends since they found that they had a lot in common with one another. Eventually Denku asked Masato to join him and the rebel factions and use his abilities to help them free Kumo and Kaminari no Kuni. At first Masato was unwilling to join, but eventually he agreed to help and use his abilities to great extent, where he earned the nickname Yukai ni, the Red Phantom. After the Civil War, the Raikage made him the head of CIND, where he used his various underground contacts that he had gained from his travels to great extent to help Kumo and the Heavenly Alliance. Masato was naturally a loner as well as a dark brooder, and often brooded over what he had become and carried many burdens and secrets. But despite his cold personality, he was not uncaring. He was actually a very caring person, especially for his friends. He fiercely despised Orochimaru for his various immoral actions to him and other poor victims. Masato was also reluctant to speak much, although whenever he did, he typically had something very important to say. He was also very close to the Raikage, and his bodyguards Ni Yugito, Fu and Kilabi as well had a very good relationship with the Yuki and Ishida clans, mainly due that he knew what it was like to be experimented on. Also, despite what he thought of himself, Masato was a very attractive man, which had earned him the attention of many women. He had crimson eyes and long black hair that streams about a bit wildly at times. He wore a red band over his head with his bangs emerging over it. Although his most distinctive feature was his tattered red cape, that was held in place over his shoulders and lower face by several buckles. Underneath his cape, Masato's attire was black with several straps and buckles and pointed metallic boots. He also wore a golden gauntlet on his left arm and carried twin short swords on his back. Right after Ritsu and Masato had arrived, Shihoin Urahara Kisuke and Yue Ying arrived in the room. Shihoin Urahara Kisuke was the county head of research and development department, where he developed several different machine and weapons for the village. For example, he was the one who developed the Kumo submarines as well as several other things, and with Yue Ying help redesign the airships plans that they got from Yuki no Kuni, Snow Country. Kisuke was Yoruichi's husband before the Civil War had started and was already head of research and development department, but due to the limited budget that Kumo had in that department, he could not create the machines he could now. Both he and Yoruichi knew each other since childhood and were close friends and eventually dated one another, and just before the Civil War started they married. During the Civil War, Kisuke had helped develop several different items that were of great use to the rebel faction, such as a special food pill that kept a shinobi full for 3 full days without any need of food, as well as kept them energized with little side effect. After the Civil War, he was made county head of Research and Development Department, where he continued to build machines and weapons for Kumo. Kisuke was laid-back, jovial person who often made jokes about things, but despite that he also had another side to his personality where he would be deceptive, cunning, and serious when the situation demanded for it. Also, despite his carefree attitude, he always spoke politely, but was sometimes sarcastic, as well as sometimes over the top with whatever he becomes passionate about something. Kisuke wore traditional wooden sandals and a bucket hat. He also wore dark green pants with matching dark green shirt and a dark grayish-green coat, having large white diamond patterns along its bottom half. Yue Ying was also county head of Research and Development Department. Much like Kisuke, she was also the wife of Zhu Liang, the Prime Minister of Kaminari no Kuni and head of the Council of Kumo and advisor to both Lady Daimyo Kicho and the Rokudaime Raikage. She was a very beautiful woman with long red hair that went down to her hips. Although despite her beauty, she was an highly skilled shinobi and an extremely intelligent woman, and created many machines and weapons such as the portable wing gliders and their launches, as well as other things. Like Zhu Liang, she did not come from this country. She and her husband had only came when Zhu Liang and her students had pleaded them to help them fight with the rebel factions. Eventually, after the country was freed and one of their students became the Raikage, both she and Zhu Liang were the Rokudaime Raikage teachers as well. Before he became the Rokudaime Raikage, they were asked to stay and help build the Heavenly Alliance, which eventually both she and her husband agreed to stay. Yue Ying wore a green knee-high outfit, with heeled boots and black gloves that leave some of her fingers uncovered, and wielded portable extendable spear and a bow and arrow. After Yue Ying and Kisuke had arrived and sat down in their seats at the war council table, Lady Daimyo Kicho herself arrived with her bodyguard Naomasa Katsumoto. Lady Daimyo Kicho was the daimyo of Kaminari no Kuni. She is an extremely beautiful woman and was a graceful maiden who had excellent martial arts skills, in which she was also highly skilled in sword fighting, since she had been trained in the samurai arts from a very young age and took to it very quickly. Unlike most other princesses, she preferred to train for combat, since her father believed that everyone in his family should be able to defend themselves and not always rely on others to defend them. She was also quite intelligent and wiser than most people her age, and wanted to do what was best for her people, especially after the civil war in her country. When her family was attacked by the Amiko clan ninjas, she had tried to help defend her family but were eventually overwhelmed. Fortunately, her teacher and bodyguard Naomasa Katsumoto was able to help her escape and hid her as the civil war waged, since he feared that she would be assassinated by either side so that they could gain power. But during the civil war, the Naomasa clan castle was attacked by followers of Daimyo Yoshiaki. Fortunately, rebel shinobis led by Denku, the name the Rokudaime Raikage went by before he became the Raikage, arrived and saved them. When they learned that Kicho was the daughter of Daimyo Dozan and rightful ruler of Kaminari no Kuni, they immediately promised her their support to help her reclaim her throne as daimyo of Kaminari no Kuni. When she revealed herself to people of Kaminari no Kuni, Daimyo Yoshiaki tried to discredit her, stating that she was an imposter, but it had failed and she was able to gain the support of Yun clan as well as many warriors, samurai and samurai lords that had been loyal to her father, including her cousin, from her mother's side, Masamune Date, also known as the Azure Dragon or the Dokuganru, the one-eyed dragon, who was the most powerful samurai lord of Kaminari no Kuni. During the civil war, she personally led her forces many times in battle and earned the nickname Ojokucho, Death Butterfly, due to the butterfly symbol she wore on her breastplate. When they won the civil war, she made Denku the Rokudaime Raikage, and with his help and the help of other countries that the Raikage was able to get support from, they were able to rebuild both Kumo and Kaminari no Kuni and created the Heavenly Alliance. Kicho wore 14. She also carried an O-katana on her side and carried a set of kuni on her right leg in a leg holder. Naomasa Katsumoto was leader of the Naomasa samurai clan and personal bodyguard and teacher to Lady Daimyo Kicho. He had served Kicho's father for many years and fought through many battles where he had earned great fame from his battles and was highly respected by many samurai both in Kaminari no Kuni and around the elemental continuant. He was very loyal to Kicho since he considered Kicho like a daughter due to knowing her since she was very young. During the attack on the royal family, Katsumoto tried to protect them but they were overwhelmed. Daimyo Dozan, who had been mortally wounded in the battle, had ordered him to get Kicho out and protect her with his life, which he sworn to do and was just able to get her out. For 4 years of the civil war he was able to keep her hidden until Daimyo Yoshiaki men attacked his castle since the Naomasa clan refused to join him and was staying neutral. When they were saved by Denku and his rebels' forces he had been naturally suspicious since he feared that they might try and use the princess to gain power or kill her before she became a threat to them, but thankfully he had been proven wrong since Denku proved to be an honorable man. Thanks to his help they were able to rebuild both Kumo and Kaminari no Kuni in just a few years and formed a powerful alliance with other nations to help one another. Kasumoto wore traditional crimson-red samurai armor and carried an O-katana on his side. "Lady Daimyo Kicho, what are you doing here? We did not expect you to come to this meeting," said Zhao Yun as he and the other members of the War Council stood up and bowed to the Lady Daimyo in respect as she sat on the seat on the pedestal overlooking the War Council. "I came here due to the Raikage informing me that this War Council meeting was being held and that I should attend it. I hope you all do not mind me listening in," said Kicho. "Of course not, Lady Daimyo, you are more than welcome," said Zhao Yun. When Lady Daimyo Kicho sat down 7 more people arrived, 4 of them were the personal bodyguards of the Raikage. They were Niyugito, Fu, Kilabi and Okatsu, all of which except for Okatsu were Jinchurikis. One of other 2 was Zhuliang, Prime Minister of Kaminari no Kuni and head of the Council of Kumo and advisor to both Lady Daimyo Kicho and the Rokudaime Raikage, and the other person next to him was Seiwa Anasu, the Kumo no Ashiryu, the personal military advisor to the Raikage and second in command for all military matters in Kumo and answerable to only the Rokudaime Raikage, and the final person among the group was the Raikage himself. Okatsu was confident, strong and intelligent konoiki. She was a dedicated and loyal ninja who would glad give up her life for the Raikage. Although unlike the other bodyguards of the Raikage, Okatsu was not a Jinchuiki, she was a typical but highly skilled konoiki. Also, she was not originally from Kumo or Kaminari no Kuni. She was from a small country whose lord was deposed in a revolt, and her clan, which was also small, had been wiped out due to they were loyal to the lord, and she had just managed to escape. After her escape of her clan's slaughter she had traveled for a while offering her services as a ninja to small lords and daimyos, but during one mission she had been captured by a group of missing nins due to her getting bad intel of their strength and numbers. They had beating her badly and had planned on raping her, but fortunately before they could the Raikage, this was before he even entered the civil war in Kumo and Kaminari and Kuni and before he became Raikage, and Seiwa Anasu had heard her screams for help as they tried to rape her. They quickly killed the men and the Raikage helped nurse her back to health from her wounds. He had even stayed by her sides when she slept since she had suffered from nightmares of her clan being killed and what had nearly happened to her. After she had healed she had practically insisted only following them since she had told them that they had saved her life and saved her from being raped, hence her life was theirs, and more especially the Raikage for staying by her side for so long and helping to heal her. She traveled with them for a while, and when they entered the civil war she earned great respect and fame for her skills as a konoiki in battle. After the civil war ended the Raikage offered her the position as one of his bodyguards, which she took without hesitation since it was what she had wanted. Okatsu wore 15 and carried a katana on her lower back. Niyugito was a proud, wise and courageous kunoiki. She was also a firm young woman and thoughtful of her comrades. She had been made into a Jinchuiki when she was only 2 and went through a detestable training that was imposed on her, although through it she was able to control her transformation into the Nibi no Bakeneko, the 2-tailed monster cat, and use its power to its full extent. She also gained confidence in herself through hard work. She had been loyal to both Kumo and the Yondaime Raikage before the civil war started and was considered the second strongest shinobi in Kumo. When the civil war started she fought for the Godaime Raikage along with the Kilabi, the Jinchuiki of the Hachibi no Kyogyu, the 8-tailed giant ox, but this had not been of choice since when the Godaime Raikage first came into power he had special Juinjutsu, cursed seal techniques, seals put on them so that he could control them and force them to do what he wanted them to do. For the first 4 years of the civil war Yugito used her powers against the rebel factions, which had nearly caused the rebel factions to be wiped out. But when Denku, the name the Raikage took before he became the Raikage, united the rebel factions, he was able to beat back the forces of the Godaime Raikage and Daimyo Yoshiaki on several occasions. But it was not until the Battle of Mikitagahara, which was often referred as the Storm Battle on the Great Plains, where the tide turned, it was where she and Killer Bee fought Denku while the combined forces of the Godaime Raikage and Daimyo Yoshiaki fought the combined forces of the rebel factions on the other end of the plain. During the battle, a massive storm arrived in the middle of the battle, and Denku used it to use his most power attack that defeated her, Killer Bee, and wiped out all 3,000 of Daimyo Yoshiaki reinforcements, who had arrived to assist in the battle, with a single attack. With the reinforcements wiped out and their Jinchurikis defeated, the Godime Raikage and Daimyo Yoshiaki and their forces had no choice but to retreat since they were beginning to lose the battle. The attack that Denku used had also nearly killed them, but lucky with their Biju they were able to heal their injuries. Soon after the battle, Denku, with the help of his sensei Zhuge Liang, was able to remove the seals her and Killer Bee had on them, after which they joined the rebel factions. Soon after the civil war, Shi, Okatsu and Killer Bee were made the personal bodyguards of the Rokudime Raikage, and when the Heavenly Alliance was formed they were then joined by another Jinchuriki from Takagaku, the hidden waterfall called Fu, who was also made the personal bodyguard of the Raikage. Yugito wore a tradition Anbu outfit with black shinobi shirt under Anbu body armor, arm pads and knee pads, as well as shinobi pants with a short katana on her back. Killer Bee was the Jinchuriki of the Hachibi no Kyogyu. He was also the younger brother of the Yondime Raikage, who was assassinated by the Amiko clan, and not only that, but he was also now the current clan head of the Yotsuki clan, since his brother was the previous clan head. The Yotsuki clan was one of Kumo founding clans and one of the only 5 clans with bloodlines in Kumo, which was the Raiten Storm Rayleigh, which allowed them to combine lightning and water to create beams of light energy and destroy anything it hits. Like Yugito, he was forced to obey the orders of the Godime Raikage and fight the rebel factions. It was not until he was defeated by Denku and released from the seals that made him follow the Godime Raikage orders that he joined the rebel factions and became the new clan head of the Yotsuki clan, since they were one of the first clans to side against the Godime Raikage when they learned that he was the one to kill the Yondime Raikage. And after the civil war, Killer Bee was also made the personal bodyguard to the Raikage. Killer Bee was a funny enough person with a good sense of humor, although he demanded respect from others, such as calling him Jinchuriki-sama or Hachibi-sama. He enjoyed speaking in song, more specifically in rap style, even when he was fighting enemies. This of course got on people's nerves. He would even stop in mid-fight to write some rhymes down, which would often infuriate his enemies as well. He would spend hours on end rapping and rhyming, which would further annoy people, since despite how long he spent doing those things, he was never any good at them. But despite his lack of skill in rapping and rhyming, he was one of Kumo's most powerful shinobis. He was able to fully use and control his Biju power when he transformed into the Hachibi no Kyogyu. Not only that, he was highly skilled in taijutsu and had incredible strength, much like his brother the Yondime Raikage, and a master swordsman where using his own conventional style, which gave him great versatility, and allowed him to fight with 8 swords at once. Killer Bee was a dark-skinned man and had possessed a muscular build, as well as white hair and beard. On his right shoulder, he had a tattoo that says, Iron, and on his left cheek, he had a tattoo of a bull's horn. He wore oval-shaped sunglasses and a white-colored forehead protector. He also wore a white-colored one-strap over one shoulder flak jacket of a jonin, with a red rope tied around his waist, white handbands, and a white scarf around his neck, and carried 7 swords on his back. Fu was also a Jinchuriki like Killer Bee, and Yugitoshi was the Jinchuriki of the Nanabi no Kabutamushi, 7-tailed horn beetle. She was a shinobi of Takagaku and the most power shinobi that they had. She was highly skilled in earth-type jutsu thanks to the earth-controlling abilities of her Biju 16. She was sent to Kumo as an offering of Takagaku's commitment to the Heavenly Alliance when they joined the Heavenly Alliance. Fu was a friendly person that was loyal to her people and would do anything to protect them. She would often spend time gardening, which she was quite good at thanks to her abilities. She also enjoyed playing with children and always made time to play with them. She was also a very confident woman and was courageous as well, and could use her abilities to great effect when fighting. Fu has bright green hair and pink eyes. She wore a high white shirt and armlets and a fishnet waistband. She also wore her Takagaku forehead protector on her right arm and her Kumogaku on her left. She also carried a cylindrical object on her back. Zhuge Liang was Prime Minister of Kaminari no Kuni and head of the Council of Kumo and advisor to both Lady Daimyo Kicho and the Rokudime Raikage. Hence he was one of the most powerful and respected men in all of Kumo and Kaminari no Kuni. He was a wise strategist with unsurpassed intelligence. He was known to many as the Nemuriru, sleeping dragon, due to like a sleeping dragon no one would dare to challenge him, for if they did like a dragon when he wakes he would utterly destroy them with his incredible power. Zhu Liang was a master genjutsu user, which shows where he hid new Kumogaku under a powerful genjutsu cloud, and was also a master at using different jutsus and combining them to make them more powerful. It is rumored that Zhu Liang's skill and power at using jutsus was on par with the late shinobi no Kami, god of shinobi, Sarutobi Haruzenth Sandaime Hokage. Zhu Liang was also a master strategist, where many rulers of other nations had often tried to have him under their employment so to command their armies. It was because of his strategies that the rebel factions won some of the greatest victories, such as the taking of Fan Castle, where he tricked the defenders into thinking that he had his men, who were besieging the castle, had left and ran away when the defenders had sent a large numbers of their men to pursue them. He and his men revealed themselves to have hidden nearby and attacked the castle when it was so lightly defended, and took it without much problem, while the defenders that were tricked out of the castle were ambushed and captured by some of Zhu Liang's men who hidden themselves to ambush them. Zhu Liang was also the former teacher of both the Raikage and Seiwa Anasu before they joined the civil war in Kaminari no Kuni and Kumo, and when they did join the civil war they were able to convince him and his wife Yue Ying to join the rebel factions and fight to free the country. After the civil war, Lady Daimyo Kicho asked for Zhu Liang assistance in helping to rule her country and asked him to be her advisor, as did Denku when he became the Rokudaime Raikage. He eventually even became head of the Council of Kumo since everyone respected his opinion and advice, and was later on named the Prime Minister of Kaminari no Kuni. Personality-wise, Zhu Liang was a placid and calculating man who was always thinking one step ahead. He often stated that every turn in battle is a part of his effortless planning. He spoke with a polite and proper manner at all times, albeit terrifyingly so when he completely stumps his enemies. Though his intentions are sometimes questioned, his loyalty to his former students was unquestionable. Zhu Liang wore very basic robes, with yin-yang symbols on opposite sides of each other, and mostly made up of green, and mystical and golden designs, and had a thin beard and moustache in a similar manner of a noble. Zhu Liang was often seen carrying a large fan in which he uses it to create power wind jutsus. Seiwa Anasu, also known as the Kumo no Ashiryu, he was the personal military advisor to the Raikage and was second in command for all military matters. Anasu was a tall man about 6'2", he had long white hair that went down to his lower shoulder blades and would have it parted on the left side of his face. He had a slightly narrow yet handsome face with bright blue eyes. Like the Raikage and some of the other members of the War Council, he was not original from Kaminari no Kuni. Anasu joined the civil war and fought with the rebels when they witnessed the atrocities that the forces of the Godaime Raikage and Daimyo Yoshiaki were doing, where they decided to fight with the rebel factions. They were then able to convince their former senseis Akechi Mitsuhide and Miyoshi Sayuri, as well as Yue Ying and Zhu Liang, to join them in the fight. Both he and Denku rose through the ranks of the rebel factions very quickly, where Denku was able to unite the rebels in a powerful fighting force and help them win many victories. Anasu also won his share of great glory in the war, where at the Battle of Eagle's Peak, where the rebel fleet and the fleets of the Godaime Raikage and Daimyo Yoshiaki fought, and Anasu used his ice abilities to create a massive ice storm to freeze over both enemy fleets and single-handedly wiping out 2/3 of the fleets with the one jutsu which earned him the nickname Kumo no Ashiryu. Anasu was originally from Mizu no Kuni. He was of the Seiwa clan, who were known for their ability to create and use ice jutsu, which forced Anasu family to go into hiding when the Bloodline Crusade began. But unfortunately his family were found and they were all killed by Bloodline hunters, and had his senseis Akechi Mitsuhide and Miyoshi Sayuri not arrived and saved him, he would have died as well. They then took him with them and trained him. After a few years they also came across Denku, who they took in as well. The two of them trained together all the time for 2 years and became the best of friends and friendly rivals. Eventually their senseis took them to Zhu Liang to be trained by him. After a few years they left together to travel and learn things on their own, which was when they got involved in the civil war in Kaminari no Kuni. After they won the civil war, Denku then became the Rokudaime Raikage and he became his personal advisor and right-hand man. Many people often referred Anasu personality to be like water, where he would often be calm and go with the flow, like water, but become as hard and cold as ice in battle and would kill his enemies without mercy. He was also very mature despite his personality and would get serious when the situation called for it. He would often talk and joke around with the Raikage, and the two of them could be found often sparring with one another since they had a sort of rivalry in terms of getting stronger. Anasu was also extremely loyal to his friends and to his loved ones and would not hesitate to put himself in harm's way to protect them. Anasu wore a black sleeveless shirt with black shinobi pants and wore black boots with steel tips at its toes and heels, as well as wore a white trench with the kanji symbol for frost on it back with blue snowflake on the edges of the trench coat. He also had a green sash around his shoulders, held together by a round clip. The sash held his long sword sheath in place on his back and is tied to it at either end. His sword was called Hyolinmaru. Its blade was about 1.4 meters long with the exception of the guard, which is in the shape of a four-pointed bronze-colored star. After everyone was seated, the Raikage began the meeting. Thank you all for coming so quickly. I know that you all were busy working with your own duties, but information that I have just recently received made it vital that I speak with you all now, spoke the Raikage. What exactly is it that is so important that you had to call a war council, Raikage-sama? Asked Ru. 2 hours ago, Captain Yoruichi of the Bolt Division arrived in my office informing me that she was able to make contact with the rebel factions of Mizuno Kuni. Although she could not get an alliance with the rebel factions, she was able to make an agreement with them where in exchange for food and medical supplies they would agree to share information with us on the plans and movements of the Mizu Daimyo and the Godai Mizukage forces. Said the Raikage. This of course got several murmurs to go around the war council. But why would they not want an alliance with us? They could do with all the help they could get, asked Kane. It's simple, they don't trust us, answered Godo, but why don't they? We have never attacked them, we share the same enemy, we should help one another, Kane openly spoke. Even though we share the same enemy, once they are gone we could easily turn on them and take over Mizuno Kuni, where they would have traded one corrupt and cruel ruler for another corrupt and cruel ruler, or at least that how they might see it, answered Yue Ying. But we're not like that. The Raikage built Heavenly Alliance to unite people and ensuring people are treated fairly and that nations could solve their problems peacefully, said Kane. That may be well and true, but the rebel factions of Mizuno Kuni know very little of use other than that the Raikage-sama wiped out an entire fleet of Mizuno Kuni and Kiri warships with over 8,000 Mizu warriors and samurai along with 2,000 Kiri shinobi. They have no real reason to trust us, and if we want their trust we have to earn it, said Swaffon. Captain Swaffon is correct that we have to earn the trust of the rebel factions if we want them to be our allies. But the matter on the alliance between us and the rebel factions of Mizuno Kuni was not why I called this meeting, spoke the Raikage seriously. This caused everyone in room to be silent and listen to the Raikage. The reason I asked you all here was because when Captain Yoruichi arrived and informed me on the agreement between us and the rebel factions, she also informed me that on her way back she received information from Saito Hajime, leader of one of the rebel factions of Mizuno Kuni. He informed me that 5 days ago Princess Sachi of Umi no Kuni, Sea Country, was captured by a squad of warships sent by the daimyo of Mizuno Kuni and the Godai Mizukage to capture her, said the Raikage. This got many shocked looks from several members as well as some gasps of surprise from others and a few frowns from the more senior members. Are you certain of this, Raikage-san? Asked Lady Kicho in a serious tone voice, and was frowning in anger since she knew Princess Sachi well, since they had met several times and consider each other friends. Yes, I am. Not long after I spoke to Saito I made contact with King Suki Mikaru through the projection ball I gave to him when Suki no Kuni became our ally. He confirmed with me that the princess had been captured by Mizuno Kuni and Kirigakure, replied the Raikage. Those bastards, do they really think that we let them get away with kidnapping the fiancé of one of our allies? Kane spoke angrily. Raikage-sama, did they make any ransom demands for the return of the princess to either Umi no Kuni or Suki no Kuni? Asked Zhu Liang calmly. Yes, when I contacted King Suki Mikaru he had just received a message from the Mizukage and the Mizu Daimyo stating that they have captured the princess and were holding her prisoner until both countries agree to give full control of Muzi no Kuni and Umi no Kuni trade alliance to Mizu no Kuni, as well as full control of their fleets to Mizu no Kuni whenever they needed them, and that the shinobi of Tsukigakure Hidden Moon would come to fight for Kiri whenever they called for them, stated the Raikage. Do they really think that either of those two countries will agree to such demands? Said Hamrio angrily, since it pissed him off what the Mizukage and the Mizu Daimyo were doing. They may have no choice. She is the princess of Umi no Kuni, is well loved by her people, not to mention I hardly think that her brother or her father the Umi Daimyo will let her rot in some prison in Mizu no Kuni or even be killed for not agreeing to Kirigakure and Mizu no Kuni demands. I also don't think that the Prince Hikaru of Suki no Kuni will allow either of those things happen to his fiancée either, stated Anasu. Raikage-sama, didn't the princess have any shinobi bodyguards with her or have a large fleet to protect her, asked Sayuri. Unfortunately, the princess insisted that she only have a light guard of 20 royal guards and a team of Konoha ninjas with no escort ships. I had offered to send ships or some teams of our own ninjas to protect the princess, but the Umi Daimyo insisted on using Konoha shinobi considering his past dealings with them. Answered the Raikage. Who exactly did Konoha send to protect the princess, asked Kai Wengi. They sent Rock Lee, also known as Konoha Nadaime no Kedakai Aoi Moju, Konoha's second prideful green beast, one of Konoha top Jonin fighters and husband to the clan head of the Kurama clan. Akamaiki Choji is known as Konoha no Kyojin Kud, Konoha strong-armed giant, and heir to the head of the Akamaiki clan as well as member of the Neo no Shika Cho. Yuhi Sarutobi Kurani, Konoha famed genjutsu specialist, former wife of the late Sarutobi Asuma of the Shugonin Junichi, 12 guardian ninja, and aunt to Konoha no Enku, monkey king of Konoha, Sarutobi Konohamaru, and Haruno Sakura, also known as Konoha Chiyu Sakura, healing Sakura of Konoha, and apprentice of the god I'm Hokage, answered the Raikage neutrally. Huh. So much for Konoha's best, scoffed Shidin. There is more. I'm afraid it seems that the rumors of Kirigakure having volley guns from Yuki no Kuni are true and have placed them on their ships. They have even made them more compact by building hand-held versions of them for their shinobis to carry. Said the Raikage. This caused many worried looks to appear on the faces of many of the War Council members. Are you certain of this, Raikage-sama? Asked Kisuke with a slight frown on his face. Yes. Saito gave me a perfect description of what the ones on the ship looked like and they match what the large volley guns look like, said the Raikage. This could cause us a great deal of trouble if we do not deal with this quickly. Do we know where the princess is being held? Asked Lu Xun. Yes. She being held in the hold, answered Yoruichi. This caused many people to frown since they knew that the hold was the strongest prison in all of Mizu no Kuni. It figures that they would put the princess there since it is the most secure place they could put her in. Said Masato. But the question now is, what do we do? Mitsuhide asked openly. Isn't it oblivious we have to rescue her? We can't let Kiri or Mizu no Kuni think that they can get away with doing something like this to our allies without paying the price, shouted Gan Ning to Mitsuhide as he stood up, in which he then turned to face the Raikage. Raikage-sama, give me the order and I have a full battle group of our best warships ready in a day, 2 at the most, and we take the prison and rescue the princess, said Gan Ning. No. If you go there like that you will most likely be intercepted by the fleet of ships that they have stationed there, plus even if you break through their ships you have to deal with the prison defenses, and even then the princess could very well likely be killed or injured as you attack the base. They could even take her out of the prison when you attack and take her to the capital of Mizu no Kuni where we would never be able to rescue her then, Kane said to Gan Ning, and then turned and stood up. Raikage-sama, this is a job for my Skyhawk ninjas and I. Give me the word and I will lead a squadron of airships loaded with 3 dozen of my best flyers to attack the prison. While the airships attack the prison, my men and I will fly into it and get the princess out before the Kiri ninja there knows what is happened, said Kane confidently. I'm afraid that will not work either, Kane-san, since most likely Kiri will have their new volley guns on the defense towers, not to mention the ships there will have them too. Hence when the airships are flouting around the prison firing on the enemy, they will make easy targets for Kiri volley guns to fire upon and be shot down. Even if you have the airships stay up high so that the volley guns won't be able to hit them, the airships will still have to come down to pick you and your people up, hence they will be shot down. Plus the prison holds up to 300 prisoners and we do not even know what cell she is being held in, stated Nady, in which she turned to the Raikage. Raikage-sama, I believe this situation is best suited for the Bolt Division since they are trained for quick inflations missions like this one, or better yet, have some of my clan members go into the prison and sneak into it and get the princess out of the prison without them ever knowing how she ever escaped, said Nady. Many of the other members of the War Council nodded their heads in agreement, likely that plan the best out of 3 since it had the best chance of succeeding. Although your plan does sounds like the best plan out of all 3 plans, Nady-san. I myself have a plan that could work even better, where not only do we rescue the princess but we will also get the rebel factions of Mizu no Kuni as our allies, as well as gain the alliance 1 or 2 more members to join it and show everyone the strength of Kumogakure and the Heavenly Alliance, since I believe it finally time for us to do so, said the Raikage. This caused many of the members to go wide-eyed while others raised their eyebrows in surprise, since for the past 3 years since the Heavenly Alliance first formed they have kept the true strength hidden from the world until they were fully ready to reveal themselves. Now it seems that the time had come to begin to show what they were truly capable of. Are you certain it time, Raikage-sama? Asked Byakuya, to which the Raikage just nodded. So what exactly is your plan to free the princess and gain the rebel factions of Mizuno Kuni as our allies and new members into the Heavenly Alliance in one fell swoop, Raikage-sama? Asked Godo. The Raikage then handed out some folders that he had been carrying when he entered the War Council room. When everyone had one each, he asked them to read the plan detailing what he planned to do. After about 10 minutes everyone and finished reading the plan, many members had raised eyebrows in either surprise or interest. A very bold plan, Raikage-sama, said Zhao Yun. I concur, although it could very well work, said Ritsu. Can we really do what it says we have to do in the time frame we have? Asked Nadi. I believe we can if Saito and his people fulfill their end of the deal, since I contacted him again before I came here to ask for the information we need and ask him his people at the hold could do the other things we need him to do, and he said he would get the info we need and send it by tomorrow afternoon, and his people there could do the job, said the Raikage. But still, this plan relies a great deal on Saito giving us the correct information and for his people to do the job right. For all we know, he may sell us out and lure us into a trap, or they could ruin the plan for us altogether, said Rukan. I don't believe he will, since Saito gains to benefit greatly if this plan succeeds and his people are not amateurs, countered the Raikage. I have to say this is by far the most daring, reckless and bold plan I have ever come across, yet it still has a very good chance of succeeding, said Zhu Liang with a slight amusement in his voice and a small smile on his face. Thank you, Sensei, I do try not to disappoint you, said the Raikage with his own smile. It seems that you have thought of everything in this plan, which I guessing you were able to form this plan from studying with the plans on the hold and the other intel we had on it that we were able to steal from Kiri. You even considered the possibility that volley guns are stationed on the guard towers and they may have ones hidden somewhere, as well as how to delay the Shinbi station there and cause utter confusion when we attack. A very impressive, Raikage-sama, said Ru. Well, you got my vote on it, since it fits my style perfectly, since it's bold, flashy and sends a clear message to the world what we're really capable of. Plus I was getting tired of us hiding away what we truly capable of, said Hamrio with a slight smirk on his face. So does everyone agree to my plan, or shall we do Nadi-san plan instead? Asked the Raikage. After a few minutes of discussing with one another, the War Council voted and put to a vote where it was decided that they would go for the Raikage plan. Very well then, by tomorrow we should have the information on the locations of all the prisoners and who is in what cell, as well as the locations of all the volley guns there if they are there. After which we will then have 2 days to prepare the forces needed for the operations. It then should take another 2 days by airship to get to Mizuno Kuni. On the 3rd they will attack the prison, in which hopefully Saito people will be in place and be ready when our forces attack, and our teams will rescue the princess, and the following day the teams will meet our escort fleet at the meeting point, stated the Raikage. Once everyone nodded their heads in agreement, they all left to discuss with themselves what will happen in the next few after everyone but the Raikage had left the War Council room, but he too soon left to go home. But as he did, he was in deep thought. The winds of change are finally beginning to blow. Soon a storm will arrive that will destroy this cruel and corrupt world that refuses to change for the better, and a new peaceful and better world shall be born from it ruins, thought the Raikage as he left the War Council room. That will be it for this video. If you want more, comment down below, like, subscribe, and see you guys later.